I'm expected down the hall, but I just wanted to come in and give a shout out to this panel because for years now, right? For years now, Tony has been one of the real wise, thoughtful advisors to eradicate hate and to a lot of the work that we do and a lot of the way we think about these issues. And Peter, we had the chance of meeting. I don't know the two of you, so I can't introduce you. But I wanted to come and say that about the two of them because you might not have expected to hear me say that. And you might have come here because you don't like some things about the people on this panel. But I'm just here to tell you, this is an incredibly special group of people with an incredibly powerful voice. And I think a voice, if you find it powerful and influential, I hope you will think about how and where we can take these voices further from here. So I just, a point of personal privilege, I asked if I could come and introduce this panel and tell you that about these people. And the other observation I will make is this. One of the reasons, as we've said repeatedly, that we started Eradicate Hate is because terrible things had happened in our lives. And in many ways, some terrible things happened in Tony's life. And who we admire are the people who take the terrible things that happened in their lives and change them into a force for good. And for me, just speaking personally, Tony is one of those people. And for that, I think you are all very privileged to be able to hear what he is all about right now. So, thank you.
Thank you, Mara. And your coat is even more magnificent than the one you had on last night. So, I just want to make a couple quick opening remarks. I want to thank Laura and Eradicate Hate for having us here today. And for all of you who are joining us, I know there's a million things going on, but we're grateful that you're taking the time to be here with us. Understanding how othering can lead to dehumanization and onto hatred and violence it's a core component of our film and the social impact campaign that we created. What we'd like to do today is focus on solution-oriented approaches to both preventing and healing these divides, and the work of building bridges across communities and cultures through interfaith collaboration. There's nothing more important than getting people in a room together and being given the opportunity to see the humanity in one another. And there's never been a time when it's been so important to do so. So we're going to use our time today to focus on success stories. And fortunately, we have a fascinating group of community leaders right here with us who've been doing an incredible amount of impact work on that end. Along with Tony, we have Rabbi Beth Jakowitz-Chodner, and we have Tarek Tiab, all of whom, by the way, became connected with one another through this very work and have become collaborators as well as a result. Along the way, we're going to share some new video content we've created out of the work we've been doing in Louisville, Kentucky, with both Rabbi Beth's community and the African American community through the Spirit-filled New Life Church. We had hoped that the incredibly dynamic Dr. Kelsey could be here with us today as well from that congregation, but his community gifted him and his wife with a vacation for their 40th anniversary, so I think they're off on some pleasure cruise or tropical island right now. God bless them both.
Somewhere nicer than here.
Hey! Disregard that comment.
No, I love Pittsburgh. I love Pittsburgh with 80-degree weather in October.
But fortunately, we have video from the work that Tony and I have been doing with the community to show today. So I thought we'd just start by, this isn't a true screening format. I mean, we're going to show a few clips of the work that we've done, but this is really a dialogue-driven panel, and we welcome all your questions and input along the way. But I just thought I would start, for those of you who aren't familiar with Tony's background, with the film, with the story, we're just going to show the trailer really quickly so you have a context for the work that we do. And then I'm going to let Tony talk a little bit about the film and our impact program. So go ahead and roll it. Thanks.
What was unthinkable a generation ago is happening. The Holocaust, is fading from memory. According to a recent survey, 41% of American adults and 66% of millennials cannot say what Auschwitz was. With over half unaware that Hitler came to power through democratic means, a lesson that Western democracies, perhaps now more than ever, cannot afford to forget. 20 years ago, I was a fervent neo-Nazi and Holocaust denier.
So what does all this say about Tony McAleer? How much of a threat is he?
I believe there are differences between the races. If that makes me a racist, then I'm a racist.
This is McAleer in 1990.
It's a life I've long left behind, but I continue to struggle with my role in contributing to such a dark legacy, and the shame I still carry. The violence and murder the white supremacist movement fantasized about all those years ago, the violence I once advocated and encouraged, have now become a horrific reality, as acts of racially motivated terrorism have increasingly become the norm. In the Jewish tradition, tshuva means return, and describes the return to God and our fellow human beings that's made possible through repentance for our wrongs. It was in that spirit that I traveled to Auschwitz, to bear witness to the unspeakable atrocities committed there, as a long overdue act of personal atonement, and in hopes of preventing others from following in my path. The inescapable truth is that white supremacist ideology, if left unchecked, always ends in murder, and we ignore the lessons of history at our own peril.
Thank you for taking the time to join us, and we really wanted to share this project with you and the curriculum and the power that it has in communities with you and with these wonderful faith leaders here today. It's been a tough journey, going and facing the darkest parts of myself, but being able to transmute that into gold, to turn it into something positive, is a really wonderful gift, I guess, that I have to share. And I feel I've got quite the karmic debt to pay, so it's the least I can do. The interfaith piece is really interesting because it's through the work of another DHS grantee several years ago, Peace Catalyst, that I got to meet Rabbi Beth. And it was during the filming of this previous film that's where I met Peter, was filming Healing from Hate, which is, I think you can stream it on Prime, about the work of Life After Hate, which I co-founded in 2010. And one of the difficult things that I had to do is, I live in Vancouver, I'd spoken to Jewish communities in Florida, LA, Chicago, Cleveland, but I'd never spoken to the Jewish community in my own town. They were sort of conspicuously absent from that. And as part of my journey with a great Jewish guide and mentor who helped me on my journey of atonement and reconciliation, I went to the synagogue where I committed my very first act of vandalism 30 years before. And it was uncomfortable, but the congregation were so amazing. But in that congregation was Tarek, who was there as part of an interfaith piece. And as you'll see throughout the discussions, this cross-cultural, cross-faith interactions lead to amazing collaborations. And that have powerful impact, and I think we can all learn from those, and we can take that idea of reaching out across the aisle, reaching out to other people who were different faith, different color, different culture from ourselves, and see where we can collaborate and build bridges to heal the massive divides that are in our society today.
You want to tee up what we're going to see next?
Yeah, so we went to Louisville, and what had happened is, as we're screening and building the curriculum and we're taking the film on the film festival circuit, it came apparent as we screened, particularly in the South, that African Americans in the audience, some of them would say, well, why do I have to learn this history when we're not allowed to teach my history? And as I talked about my journey of atonement and tshuva with the Jewish community, it was in a Jewish community center in Louisville. Rabbi Beth was in the room, and Pastor Kelsey, who sadly couldn't be here today, he said, "Where's your restitution to my people?" And there was 13 other faith leaders in that room, and you could cut the tension with a knife. And I was like a little, feeling a bit nervous. And I was vulnerable with him. I said, "Look, I don't know how. In these other journeys of atonement that I've done, there's always been a guide who's shown up to help me navigate that work." I said I was afraid to do it and put a wrong foot forward for fear of creating more harm or re-traumatizing people. So I hadn't done it. And he was testy with me, to say the least. And you'll see him talk about it in the clip. But he said, "Can I help you?" And I walked across the room and I shook his hand. And I said, "Yes, you can." And we came back to Louisville later to his church and spent time with his congregation. And we created, there's 2 clips we're going to show you today that are like an addendum to the film to allow African American students to relate to it, but for it to be more accessible, and they can look at it through the lens of their own community's experience for the benefit of all. And so I think let's roll with the clip.
What you hope to achieve out of the time we spend today with you and your congregation?
When they see you this evening, I want them to begin to see the transformational power of forgiveness. Because if I hold grudges against you, I'm not hurting you, I'm really hurting myself. But Tony, you're no different than me. You just grew up in Vancouver. I grew up in the streets of Louisville, Kentucky, the projects. I come from a one-parent home. I had my first gun when I was 9 years old. I hung with some bad boys. I wouldn't run with them, because to me, they had the power, they had the status, a sense of belonging and acceptance. Same thing. And that's why people get into gangs. Daddy's not there. You said you had your father. I didn't have a father.
My dad was there. He was just completely emotionally unavailable.
And mine was not there.
Yeah.
We didn't call them gangs, but if you look at it retrospectively, I was in a gang,
Yeah, I wouldn't have called what I was involved with a gang either, but when you look back retrospectively, it was a gang.
We were living our lives. We all have been somewhere. We all have done some things. And that guilt and shame, I cannot wait for some of our church leaders to sit with you and talk with you and meet you and not judge you, but see themselves.
And I truly believe that the world is a mirror.
Yeah.
And when I meet someone and they annoy the heck out of me and I just don't like that person, I ask myself this question: what is it about that person I don't like about myself that they're showing me?
Yeah.
And 30, 40 years ago, there's no way we could have got along. There's no way we could have connected.
No.
But as you see yourself in me, I see myself in you.
Yeah. And so therefore, we can't be too hard on the people today. Well, guess what? They're young Steve and young Tonys.
Absolutely. When we're compassionate with someone, we hold that mirror up and allow them to see the humanity reflected back at them.
That's why we get along, because we see each other.
And we met in that day and uncomfortable. It wasn't the most comfortable conversation. And, you were challenging me. And
because I didn't want to face my fear. And then when you stood up, everything in me said, leave. I said, this is a white supremacist. I said, how dare he think we're going to wave the white flag and say, okay, check off the boxes so he can go home and feel good about himself? I said, no. I was taught to hate you. You was taught to hate me. And now, here we are. My anger was rising, and I had to come to grips with how I was feeling. I'm a pastor, I'm a child of God, I'm a Christian, I'm a believer. I could have walked away as the biggest hypocrite. But me having met you, man, you freed me. You didn't ask for forgiveness. I forgave me, so I can say now I can forgive him. To actually shake your hand, I had to release and let go of the power of hate.
It's a question I get asked. So how do we rehumanize people? What is the antidote to that dehumanization? And for me, the answer is compassion.
Yeah, compassion, and Tony, like you and I, self-assessment, being real, being truthful. The only thing that can remove hate is not hate, but love. I got to know the truth, not so much about you, but know the truth about me so I can be free. And there are times we're living in our own prisons in our mind and in our heart and our thinking and our emotions because we have imprisoned ourselves and we're waiting for somebody else to accept us when we have really rejected ourselves. You know, so like I say, the cure for hate is compassion. It's in us. It's in us.
That's how we rehumanize people. And what that looks like is you and me sitting down and having conversations like this.
So that's just a small snapshot of what turned out to be an incredibly powerful experience in Louisville. And this kind of creates the perfect segue to introduce Rabbi Beth. These two gentlemen met through Rabbi Beth and at an event at a forum that you had created in Louisville. And I'd really like Rabbi Beth to share a little bit about your interfaith work and your successes.
Thank you, Peter. And I just want to thank all of you for being here and Eradicate Hate for having us. And, of course, thanking Tony, too. And Tarek, who I met just this weekend in person. But, well, it's during the week. It feels like a weekend. Anyway, so interfaith work has been a really big part of my rabbinate, whether it was where I live now in Louisville, Kentucky, or where I was previously in Wheeling, West Virginia. The first thing I did in Louisville was I reached out to other clergy members. I wanted to start an interfaith clergy group because there was not any that I was aware of. So we had 3 priests, 3 Protestant ministers, 3 Jews. We wanted 3 Muslims, but I found an imam and a Muslim faith leader, community leader, and we would meet and we would talk, and it was just about getting to know each other, asking questions, breaking bread together, and it takes time to be able to get to know people, but that's one of the keys of interfaith work is building those bridges, reaching out to another person and saying, hey, let's find a way to connect. And it was from someone named Martin who was in that interfaith group that knew Tony. And then that's how initially. And then when he had gone to Auschwitz, then Martin reached out to me and said, hey, Tony has this film. Can we bring it to Louisville? And I'm like, yeah, we're going to make it happen. So I invited Dr. Kelsey. So how did I meet Dr. Kelsey? Because in Louisville, there was a group that we decided that we would have 4 Jewish houses of worship and 4 African-American houses of worship joined together and partner. We met at each other's houses of worship, and then we went to the Louisville Orchestra together, where they were doing music and readings by Jews and African Americans. And it was really powerful. And so again, how do you do it? Well, we planned it, Dr. Kelsey and I, and we started with a meal. And first we went to their church. And then we just got together in a circle and we said, everybody say something tell us something about yourself. And then we broke into two groups. And at dinner, we said every table has to have half from each congregation, because the normal thing to do would be, well, we'll sit here and they'll sit there, because you sit with who you're comfortable with. But we said half at each, and people listened. And then I was with half the group, and Dr. Kelsey took half the group, and we had different topics to discuss. And they understood, they listened to a recording of a rabbi who was at the March on Washington and who had spoke right before Martin Luther King gave his famous I Have a Dream speech. And it was really amazing how the black people in the group were like, wow, like, why didn't I know this? Why did I never learn about this rabbi? Why wasn't I taught that? And then, you know, we came together at the end, and they came to our synagogue, and we had a meal. And then we went to the symphony orchestra together, all our congregations. And long story short, our two houses of worship decided we want to continue together. And I just want to give another example of something that we did with Dr. Kelsey's church is after we ate, because we had already been together 3 times, so now we could go a little deeper. So we had some questions, like in these small groups sitting around the table. So each person answered, I felt proud to be black or Jewish when. I felt afraid to be black or Jewish when. I wish more people understood blank about being black or Jewish. And it was a way, again, for us to understand each other better. What are we proud about from our traditions and our people? And what are the things that we've experienced? And what are the things that have made us afraid? And by hearing each other's stories, we grew closer even further than we already were, because we heard the humanity in each other. We could feel each other's pain, because there are so many similarities. And that's the truth, whether it's across countries, across religions, skin color, it doesn't matter. Like, when we're able to see the other person as a human being and recognizing that they have feelings and emotions, and then we see, wow, I have those same feelings and those emotions, it strengthens that bond. And it's all about getting to know people in face-to-face and having discussions and being willing to talk about things that are challenging and even hurtful or painful, or as Tony said, making oneself vulnerable. Because when you have the courage to make yourself vulnerable, then the other people can learn about who you are. And I don't mean other like othering them. I mean the people with whom you are talking. And so I've done, as you can see, there's been a lot. I know time is short, so I think I'm going to stop there. But the idea of making it a point to reach out to members of communities that are outside of your normal circle of people that you would connect with, so that you can build bridges, make relationships and connections, and that's how together we can continue the important work. In Hebrew, it's called Tikkun Olam, repairing the world.
Thank you, Rabbi Beth. Well said. This concept of having courage in terms of reaching across the aisle and connecting with people who, on the face of things, may seem different than you initially, it's a big core component of the work that Tony and I do with high school and college students as well. We provide them with a toolkit and different kinds of experiential workshop opportunities where we help young people arm them with the tools to operate with more courage in their daily life. And as you can see, I mean, Beth's work is extensive, and these relationships that she has developed and fostered have gone on for years now, and they deepen with each passing year in Louisville. And I can say, just having been there myself, it's remarkable how deep those roots have gone already, and the understanding that you've been able to foster between communities. It's really inspiring. Tariq, can you tell me a little bit about your work and how, by the way, Tariq and Tony are both Vancouverites, is that a word?
Vancouverites, that's right. So Tariq Tayyab, Foundation for a Path Forward, what we are as an organization, we're the first faith community convener for anti-racism initiatives for the province of British Columbia. And that's how we met Tony. And part of this work happened, so Canada has the dubious distinction of having the most Islamophobia motivated murders of any G7 country, in a Western country. In the last 7 years or so, there's been 11 murders. And just a quick snapshot, in 2017, January 29th, a right-wing extremist came into a mosque in Quebec City while people were doing their prayers at the mosque and shot them in the back, injuring many, but killing 6 fathers. And then recently, a few years ago, about 3 years ago, a right-wing extremist in a pickup truck saw a visible Muslim family, a husband, his mother, his wife, and his daughter run over and son injured, but 4 members of the family were brutally killed. And lastly, a caretaker at a mosque in Toronto, his throat was slit by a neo-Nazi white supremacist Satanist. Now, heavy, heavy stuff. And so when we look at hate, whether it's Islamophobia or anti-Semitism, black racism, anti-Asian hate, First Nations, Indigenous hate, the dehumanization of people. And a lot of this content is online about a community. And the way in all the discussions that we've had at this forum, that these conspiracy theories, these videos and content that circulate online really represent a small, narrow window to the world of one viewpoint without necessarily seeing the other viewpoint. So part of our work to meet people where they're at. So after the Quebec mosque shootings, we had thousands of people come from all across the spectrum to our mosques with candles, with flowers, with tears in their eyes to show in solidarity, whether you're black, you're Asian, you're Christian, you're Jewish, you're Muslim, that not in our name, not as Canadians, that this is not what we stand for in our country, in our society. And that was very emotional. It was like the most patriotic moment I've ever felt being born and raised in Canada, that this love of community. And what we realized was there are a lot of folks that have this misperception, even this hatred towards Islam and Muslims, but also for other communities. So what we determined to do was something called the Interfaith Exchange, where we would meet people where they're at. So whether it was churches, temples, synagogues, we would make that first phone call where we would say, we're so-and-so from this organization, and we'd like to come visit you at your place of worship and then answer any questions you might have about our faith or our community. And so that started initially, slowly, and then we would have meals, we would have conversations, and we would invite folks to come to the mosque, right? And so there's trepidation for Muslims to come to Christian places of worship or Jewish places of worship, and vice versa for folks to come to our mosque. And a lot of people were strangely afraid. And it was like, it was 4 walls, and we got to know each other in that way. And one key learning we learned upon is you don't know what you don't know. You don't know what you don't know, and don't make assumptions. And what we learned is that every community feels that their community is the most misunderstood, the most discriminated against. Every community, even communities that I thought were the mainstream community or the mainstream religions. So then it was like, so what is the commonality? So the commonality, if you take away somebody's color, you take away somebody's religion, and just the core humanity, everyone wants to be loved and to love. Everyone wants to live in peace. Everyone wants trust. Everyone wants honesty, respect, appreciation, safety, security, prosperity, equality, peace, and justice. And what we found is people have certain monolithic views. All white people are. all black people are, all Chinese people are, all Muslim people are, et cetera, et cetera. And what we found is as we start to see the nuance, just like in our family, and one last thing I'll say, I have 4 kids, I have a wife, I have my parents, I have a huge extended family. We don't understand each other, we don't see eye to eye on many things. So just like all Muslims, 2 billion Muslims, or 2 billion Christians, or however many other faiths their populations are, not everyone's a monolith. Not everyone has the same view. Not everyone believes the same thing in the same way. And how do we do our work? We have to make that phone call. We have to take that first step, not make any assumptions, and to go with an honest intention of friendship without a necessary agenda. So that's a bit about our work.
Thank you so much. It's well done, my friend. We're just taking time into consideration. We did want to share one more clip from the work that we've been doing in Louisville. This one in particular, since I think it was a very powerful experience for everyone who was involved. And then I want to open up the floor to any questions that you may all have. I know I have a list of my own, but I guess I'd rather make sure that there's time for you folks to ask questions. So if we could just roll this last clip. Thank you.
Now that we have all seen the documentary, this is now your opportunity to ask some questions. The hatred that has been perpetrated toward us is the same hatred we perpetrate on one another, black on black. So as we're looking out, we also must look in.
A lot of the theme of this film is about bearing witness. And what does it mean to bear witness? And, you know, for me, it was to go into that place, Auschwitz, that place that I advocated the same ideology that created it. And to walk in and amongst those buildings and to feel the energy and to feel the pain and to feel the suffering. As I said in the movie, I didn't want to go there to intellectually know Auschwitz. I wanted to go there and feel it.
I had the opportunity to visit Slidell, Louisiana, and they still have an active museum. They just did the implantation there for African Americans. And when I walked that plantation and I sat in cells where people were auctioned off, and I walked in churches and I seen the living quarters, I could still feel the eerie feeling of every person that walked and bled and died and sweating. And I encourage you, if you ever get the opportunity for you to go to this museum, because the feeling that you feel from empathy from when you actually went to Auschwitz, I believe you feel the same feeling at this plantation. I cried because it hurt me that I still have to love, in spite of everything I know, there was an act of genocide on people just out of pure evil. So now I'm being retrained because it's about the human race. It's about loving people. Because when I cut myself and my blood comes to the surface, it's green just like any other individual in here. So I have to rise above, and that's what Bishop is teaching us about being believers, about forgiveness is for me, not for the person that caused the problem. So I want to say out of forgive yourself, and I ask you to forgive me for how I perceived you, and that's what this is really about. So I just wanted to say thank you.
Thank you very much, and I forgive you absolutely. those were such powerful words. And, when you were talking about going to a plantation, and we had been talking about that earlier, I want to make that commitment to you today, that you and I are going to go to that plantation. And just as somebody shared their history with me at Auschwitz, I want you to share your history with me there. And I want to bear witness to what has happened in the past to you and your people. That courage is such an important piece to it. We have to have compassion. We have to be curious about the other and curious about self. And we're not going to overcome the problems in our communities, in our families, in our society from inside our comfort zone. It's going to have to take courage. And we have to inspire each other to be courageous, to be curious, to be compassionate. You all have that power. As human beings, we have the incredible power to inspire people around us, for better or for worse. You can do it unconsciously, or you can do it with intention.
If we want to fight for freedom, let's fight for it. But let's not start events.
Well, for any of you who have seen Cure for Hate, instantly recognize the parallels between this story here and Tony's journey in the Cure for Hate. And I think the more that Tony and I dig into and explore this work, the more that we see these parallels in just about every culture and community you can imagine. And that it's the universal work of helping people to see the humanity in one another. We don't have a ton of time, so I really would like to open the floor up to questions. Yes, sir.
As I'm watching that, I heard you talk about what it's like to feel like a or feel like a Jew. I did not hear anyone say what it feels like to be gay or trans, which are two of the real, or what it would feel like to be a Palestinian. So that plantation doesn't function anymore, and it's beautiful what you're doing. But phobia against trans people and gay people like myself still exists. And the conflict in Israel between the Palestinians is still existing. So my question is, how can you bring some of that into gay or trans people, for instance? Please use the microphone because it's close to your mouth.
Sounds good. So we have a group called The Other People. So The Other People is 7 community leaders, 1 Jewish, 1 Muslim, 1 Christian, Black, Asian, First Nations, Sikh, and LGBTQ. So we do presentations at high schools, and where we speak about our lived experience as Canadians in the Canadian context of how we've experienced discrimination from all the various people that I just mentioned. Now, in the context of Israel and Gaza, so the conversations we've had, how we operate with that framework is the faculty, the students, they send questions to our group about all our communities. What are at times thoughtful questions and some very racist, very discriminatory questions, but how we get them, they're anonymized. So that way it's an open conversation. So in the context of Israel and Gaza, so the rabbi I work with, he has very strong views. And again, we have this conversation about online content and the way the algorithms serve up our own community, our own personal interests. So in my particular case, the content that I see from Palestine, where in Gaza, in the West Bank, in Lebanon, horrific, traumatizing. and just the carnage. And what he's seeing is he's seeing the victims of October 7th, and he's seeing the hostages, and he has a connection to families. So the repetition of this content that I'm seeing, that he's seeing, we're only seeing one worldview. We're not necessarily seeing the other worldview. And then when we meet, because we represent our wider communities, and there's so much sadness, pain, anger, and to have that dialogue, that I could say whatever facts that I know, he can say whatever facts that he knows, and at times we do not agree at all, but we can still agree to disagree and not dislike one another and not want to work with each other. But the world is what it is. We believe what we believe, but we still have to work towards the common good. And there are things that are out of our control, but we still have to work in our capacity for the greater good. I hope that answers your question.
I would like to just chime in on that. First of all, I want to say that I'm sorry that LGBTQ and trans people are experiencing so much discrimination today, as in the past. I kind of thought things had changed, but it seems like it's getting worse for that community too. So at Temple Shalom, we have on our front door, and we have a big poster hanging inside that we got from, it basically says this is a safe place. It indicates, and it's like rainbow colors, that this is a safe place if you're LGBTQ, plus, you know, the additional letters, like this is a safe place for you and you're welcome. We definitely have members of our congregation that fall into that category, and they are welcome. Since October 7th, so let me just first say that I have a very good relationship, and I'm not the only Jewish person in Louisville. We have a very good relationship with many members of the Muslim community, and we have done many things together. We have a Muslim-Jewish alliance. So it's two things that I think are, and so before COVID, in fact, a mosque was defaced. And so members of my synagogue, you know, the faith traditions, we made a circle of love around them. And while they prayed on Friday, and people helped paint over, and then after we got an anti-Semitic phone call, they came to us, and there's pictures of them in our sanctuary, not only Muslim, but many Muslims and some others encircling us as we prayed on Friday night. And so that was really beautiful. So fast forward to October 7th, we have maintained our friendship and our relationship. When the MAC, the Muslim Americans for Compassion, hosted their iftar dinner, the Jewish clergy, many of us, we sponsored and we purchased a table. And my friend Dr. Barber specifically mentioned that we were there and thanked us. And then there's a program through the Jewish Family and Career Services that's held every year. It's called the Mosaic Awards. It's an award, 5 people from the community who are either immigrants or first generation to Louisville who have made a positive impact in our community are awarded. You know, they get an award, and it's a big dinner. And so this past year, a member of the Muslim community was nominated, and last year as well. And MAC, it didn't seem like they were going to be sponsoring a table. And so I reached out to Dr. Barber, and I said, look, we have a Temple Shalom table. We've purchased it. How about we share it with MAC, and we can have one table together? And that was intentional because we still need to come together despite what's happening in the Middle East. We have relationships, and it's important that we maintain them in our communities, because at the end of the day, whatever I say or whatever they say, you know, he says or members of his community, I have no impact over what's happening there, but I do can make an impact where I live. And that's what I try to focus on when it comes to these interfaith relationships.
For myself, one of the most shameful things that I ever did was a gay bashing when I was 17. And so if you'll notice, whenever I'm speaking publicly, I'm always wearing at least something pink so that it never gets forgotten. The very first journey of atonement and the work of repair that I did, because they don't come all at once. The first one was the gay community. and I did a lot of outreach in the gay community. I sit on the board of directors for the Gay and Lesbian Business Association, and I give back in the ways that I can give back to help that work of repair. I've done it with the Sikh community. This film is about that journey of repair with the Jewish community, and the work we're going to do with Dr. Kelsey, as he's shown up as every single time. You know, there's the old Buddhist saying, when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. That there seems to be someone who arrives at the right time to take me by the hand and walk me through that difficult work of repair in those communities, so that it's done in the most thoughtful of ways. And you know, we've showed you 12 minutes of clips. We're here for an hour, and there's so much we could talk about in so little time. In the movie The Cure for Hate, we would talk about the origin of the Pink Triangle and what the Nazis did to gay people as well. So it's never forgotten and overlooked from the work I do.
Yes, up there. I'd throw the microphone, but in the interest of time. Cure for Hate, well, the film has been finished for quite some time. It's just being distributed now. Media Education Foundation is our educational distributor. If you have access to Canopy, you can watch it on Canopy. That's Canopy with a K. You can also watch it and rent it through Media Education Foundation's own site. We also just signed a distribution deal with American Public Television, who services PBS stations around the country. They're going to start to make the film available to PBS stations domestically. And we also signed a deal with their international arm, where they're now shopping the film for broadcast in Europe and around the world. So it's all slowly coming together. But thank you for asking. That provides me an opportunity to plug the film. Yes?
Thanks again. It's wonderful to see you start developing curriculum. How are you navigating spaces, and I'm not sure as Canada, in the U.S., particularly with spec material, is really not going to be allowed to be introduced to certain institutions like schools. Do you have a strategy to navigate that? Because, like one of the gentlemen talked about the clip, if they're not exposed to this, they will never know. So, and I worry, and this is the question, is there a strategy for you, others that can do this, because it's more, and this information gets censored or being, eliminated from being shown? How do you get these messages out?
When we first took it out on the road and we were developing the curriculum, we were in 45 high schools last year, screened it to 6,100 students and parents, because where we could, we also did evening screenings so that the parents had the opportunity to watch the film so that they could have further discussion at home. We've tried to make the film, like, the concepts are universal, right? Nobody really wants polarization, othering. They don't want their children involved in that. They don't want their children involved in extremism. They may be somewhat extreme and not realize that they're doing it, but nobody on the surface, everybody is for the core, curiosity, courage, and compassion. Nobody's against that. That's at the core of what we teach. And we took this film into the bluest town in the bluest county in the bluest state, Brattleboro, Vermont. But we also took it into the reddest town in the reddest county in the reddest state, Rigby, Idaho. And over 8 states, we've been in blue counties and red counties. The things that we're talking about and the things with their children, these are universal. Nobody really pushes back the way that and we've been very careful as to not to include things that are obvious tripwires, right? So that someone gets triggered and says, "Oh, this can't be in my school." We've had pushback, but nothing that's really been that difficult. There was a school, I think we had 2,500 students watch the film, 1,200 in the morning, 1,200 in the afternoon, and there was concern about parents and all of that stuff, and so children were allowed, with their parents' consent, to opt out. And I think out of 2,500 students, 16 opted out. Right? So this message is universal, and it doesn't matter. The politics doesn't come into it as much.
Yeah, I think we've made an effort to make the film patently apolitical. That was part of the point. Keep the focus on these universal humanitarian concerns, right? And just to piggyback on your anecdote about a couple schools where some of the parents gave us some pushback, is one of the most remarkable things I witnessed was we encouraged the schools that to encourage those parents to come and attend the screenings. And in many cases they did, and in many cases they came up to thank us afterwards, and in many cases they were very engaged in the conversations after the film in a really open and curious way, which is, I think, a testament to, I don't know, we're onto something.
The longest talkback we had after a community screening was in Rigby, Idaho. They asked us questions for 2 hours, and the only reason it stopped is because the electricity in the municipal building was on a timer, and at 10 p.m. the lights went off.
So we all had to exit into the parking lot in the dark. It was quite an evening. It is just about 3. We're not going anywhere. Someone may come in and kick us out in a little while, but if there's any other questions, we're here and we're welcome to take them. Yes?
That's a really, really great question. And she said, how can I go and sit in a room with someone who hates me? Like how can I go into a room with people that hate me? How's that supposed to work, right?
And I think she mentioned, or may even want me dead. Right.
Or may even want me dead. I'm not, I co-founded Life After Hate, and I left that in 2019, but we helped 700 people leave hate groups behind, right? And when we talk about compassion and engaging and talking to people, I just want to be very clear here. I'm not for a minute suggesting that people of color have the responsibility to take on this work and put themselves at risk to do this. That's not a requirement. But on the flip side, I know that it's very difficult to hate someone you know. And some of the most profound changes that I've seen, and in the aftermath of Charlottesville, we had people from every faith, color, sexuality call and say, hey, I live in this town, I'm trans, and if you need me to sit down and talk to one of these people, I'm volunteering to do it. It's an incredible gift, should you choose to give it. But I just want to be clear, it's a gift for you to give. It's not a responsibility. But when we sit down with people, once you get to know them, I've just seen it so many times that it's transformative. And that's that compassion piece. When you can sit there and share yourself with that person, you have to do it in a safe environment, of course, like classroom or something like that. But that power that those moments hold are profound.
I don't know if any of you are familiar with a famous Boy Scout study from the 50s, where they took these boys who are away at camp, summer camp, and they divided them into 2 groups, and they put them in different parts of this national park. They didn't know one another existed, so they let them sort of bond and let group affinity sort of solidify. And then they let them realize that one another, each group, were operating independently of one another within this camping ground. And this psychologist that did this study was shocked at how amped up they were about seeing the other group as other and less than, and that they even, all of these sort of power dynamics clicked in really quickly, and they started to fight with one another and raid one another's cabins at night and trash one another's things and got into fight. And finally there was like a big showdown where it was like, the end of West Side Story, where they all showed up and they were gonna fight one another, under the moon that night. And these scientists were like, wow, okay, we got to do something here. And so they started to devise these clever little exercises that forced them to work together. Like one day, like the kitchen mysteriously broke down and they had to figure out how to cook dinner together. One day the bus mysteriously got a flat tire and they had to figure out how to, fix the bus so they could get to where they wanted to go together. And what they found is just as quickly they began to develop friendships and bonds between one another in the different outgroups. And what the scientists initially saw as being this really dispirited, like, oh my God, is this what's at the core of our humanity, that we can hate one another so easily and quickly? Just as quickly as the division occurred, the healing part occurred too. And in a very short period of time, they actually became very friendly with another, and all of those sort of divisions faded, and many of them left camp as friends. So I think it's a really fascinating little case study.
I think that your question is really great, and I think also what Tony said is that clearly it needs to be done in a safe place, clearly initial meetings in public, and perhaps whether it's a religious leader, some kind of community leader, someone who might know of people that they can connect you with. And I think that there are people out there. I mean, think how many people are here at this conference and how many people are watching online that really do want to eradicate hate and really want to break down those barriers. So in some communities, it'll be easier and will take less time to find partners. And in some, it'll take longer. But I would just say, it seems to me like you have that desire. And if you do, then pursue it. But obviously, do it safely. I wanted to just share a quote. Martin Luther King said this at Cornell College, which is in Mount Vernon, Iowa. He said this in 1962. He said, "I am convinced that men hate each other because they fear each other. They fear each other because they don't know each other. And they don't know each other because they don't communicate with each other. And they don't communicate with each other because they are separated from each other." And I think that the work, that I do, that I think everyone here does, it's trying to meet people and to communicate, and taking the time to know people. And I want to give one what I think is a great example of true interfaith work. So I was at my synagogue one Shabbat morning, one Saturday morning, and we happened to be lingering longer than normal. And a woman comes to the door, and she's holding, a pamphlet, and I thought she was at the wrong address because we weren't there to do work. And she knocks on the door, and she said, "I'd like to speak with the rabbi." And I said, "I'm the rabbi." And she said, "Well, I'm from Kentucky Refugee Ministries, and I wanted to know if you would help sponsor a refugee family." And I said, "Of course, yeah, let's talk." And this was a Muslim woman who came to a Jewish house of worship to ask us to sponsor a Christian family. And I thought, you know what, that's it, she had the courage to come to the synagogue, had never been there. We said yes, and our family turned out, that family was from Eritrea. And our second family that we sponsored was from Afghanistan. And then we didn't do as much. We didn't set up the apartment and such, but we gave some financial assistance to a family that came from Ukraine. And so it's about being willing to first start the search. But I think inside, to do this work, we have to first really accept, not know intellectually, but in our gut. We have to believe that every person has value and worth, regardless of where they live, religion, color, it's anything that could be seen as a difference. I believe that we need to really believe that every person, as it says in the book of Genesis, is created b'tselem Elohim, in the image of God. And I need to be able to see God in the face of others in order to do this work. And I need to be patient, because it's not always going to happen quickly. And I need to be willing to be open to share, and also be willing to listen and really hear what the other person is saying, what their fears are, what their concerns are, as well as what their hopes and dreams are. And together, we are all children of God wherever we live in this world. But unfortunately, there are too many who are not open to seeing the godliness in others, and they focus on what separates us. And to move forward, we need to each look for what we have in common, focus on where we can identify with the other person, as opposed to focusing on what is different between us.
Thanks, Rabbi Beth. I think that's a great takeaway. We're well over time now. I really want to thank Rabbi Beth and Tarek. Came all this way to join us here for this conference. I want to thank everybody for being here. Tony and I will be out at the table. They'll probably be out at the table as well with us the rest of the afternoon if anyone wants to come over and chat or ask any questions. So thank you so much for spending your time with us.